good afternoon, and welcome to Rubbing Minds. My name is Isabella Adediji. Happy new month, happy September. September heralds the Ember month, and we hope you keep safe during this period. A lot to discuss on the show. We're looking at the economic situation in Nigeria, security challenges, in particular kidnapping in Nigeria, as well as the upcoming elections in Edo State and the peaceful protest that was had by the students at the University of Ibadan. To kick off this conversation, I'm joined by Olufemi Ibitoye, a public affairs analyst who is joining via the Abuja studio. Olufemi, welcome to Rubbing Minds.
Good afternoon, Isabella.
We're glad to have you on the show. Also joining us virtually via Zoom is Okpeyemi Oke, also a public affairs analyst. Okpeyemi, welcome to Rubbing Minds. I'll start the conversation with you, Olufemi, and I'm sure Okpeyemi will join. Now, let's look at some of the economic challenges under this current administration, that is President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. There have been a lot of talks about managing the debt situation and also managing the finances of this country responsibly. And for the average Nigerian, this is all well and good, but how does it affect the cost of living? Where is the priority? Is it on managing the high levels of debt, or is it on solving the immediate needs of Nigerians who are grappling with record high levels of inflation that has affected the cost of living? Where should the government be prioritizing, Olufemi?
Okay, so thank you, and good afternoon, Okpeyemi Oke. Good to have you here again. So I think one thing we need to first of all realize is that when it comes to economic development and our debt profile in Nigeria, one thing is very, very important. We didn't just get there today. We need to understand that there were decisions of yesterday. And of course, I can tell you that this present administration, if it had not been from, it has not been from the same political party, we will have had a lot of things that will have, be flying across the headline. For example, the present inflation which we've gotten ourselves here today is as a result of mismanagement of our debts. And if you looked at it, the Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2007 talked about how our debts, you see, everywhere in the world, nations acquire debt to finance their budget, even the first world country, but they do that with internal debt. But in our own case as a country, most of the debt which we are getting now, we use 90% of it to finance the debts we already have on ground. So, and which is having a resultant effect. Of course, we see what inflation numbers are saying. We see what the food inflation, which is the major problem we are having as a country. But here is it. If you look at the policies of this present administration, it's easier for us as analysts, as economics, just to talk about the numbers, just to criticize government. But then we need to look at what governments are doing and their intentions. If you look at the policies of the present administration, you see that in a way, for example, let's look at the ways and means, which was overly abused by the last administration, close to 30 trillion. If you look at it as of today, this present administration has been able, because when the present CBN governor got into the M of affairs, he said it was so practical and objective. He said he will not grant any ways and means except the present one is being paid. And of course, the Minister of Finance agreed with him and said they will not only pay, they will also stop borrowing. And as of today, maybe just about 4 or 5 trillion is remaining for them to pay from the previous ways and means. So if you look at this debt management profile, we are going somewhere. If you look at the policy, even this present administration, they try as much as possible not to go about borrowing. So instead of that, they look at to citizens via bonds and the like. So all of this, but then how does it reflect on the livelihood of an average Nigerian? What an average Nigerian want to talk to you about is how much is a module of gari, how much is a module of rice. That is what concerns an average Nigerian. But however, we also need to understand that it takes process to get to where we need to get to. Now, this is where the government now needs to come in and needs to take immediate action.
And I like how you say the government
We
needs
had
to come
subsidy
in
removal.
to address the issues on ground. And while we're managing the debt profile, then how does the government explain some spending that has been seen by a lot of Nigerians as being reckless? We still have the cost of governance on the increase. We still have a lot of money being spent on things that are not deemed important. For example, the Hajj, the money that was budgeted for Hajj, and we could go on and on. What is this government saying? Look, how are we going to convince the people that they need to tighten their belts because we are also tightening our own belt? So it's one thing to do the debt recovery and to put all these policies in place, but how can they also show that they understand what the plight of the average citizen?
Okay, so absolutely. There's a Chinese proverb that says, talk doesn't cook the rice, you have to fire the heat. So if you looked at it, like I mentioned, the Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2007, so specific that when you want to borrow for infrastructure development and human capital development. But then it's so absurd when we see that some of this we borrow for consumption. And this is where an average Nigerian see our government or those in power with a lot of cynicism that whatever they do, it's always about themselves. So government needs to first of all realize that they need to further cut down the cost of governance. Because even in management, those, we talked about the Blue Ocean strategy, which means you have to cut down your cost of production because so that you can make good profit. So government needs to first of all cut down the cost of management, and there need to be communication. Because some of these policies, if you looked at it, policies of government, because an average Nigerian doesn't really trust government. So when these policies comes out, they don't really embrace it. For example, look at what we have with the NEL fund, where a particular region, they are not really coming forward to apply for the student loan. It is because they don't trust government. So government has a lot to do as regards information sharing, either through their, National Orientation Agency, Nigerian Institute for Cultural Orientation. You need to let people know what you're doing. And just like a Yoruba proverb would say that if you want to pick granuts for a blind man, you have to be whistling so that the blind man is so sure that you are not eating the granite. So government, we are so tired of all these rhetorics. So now, but then if you looked at it, as regards food inflation, the Minister of Agric has been giving out grains to state government, to farmers. All of these things, it is to help. So we also need governments at the subnational level to support what the government at the federal level is doing. So government needs to, put in more socio-economic investment, socio-economic development. For example, let there be CNG buses. Like I was telling someone, I think day before yesterday, that if the Minister of FCT brings in at least 100 CNG buses, distribute it to satellite towns, this is where majority of those who are impacted by these government policies lived. So those in Maraba, those in Kubwa, those in Lugbe, this will have an impact on their spending. This will have an impact on the way they transport themselves down to town. So these are some of the policies that the government needs to, and there's this other policy that they also need to make sure that it reach those it's supposed to reach. It should not be for political servitude. Those who are politically aligned with you, you now want to compensate them. So government needs to be intentional in making sure that this policy reach those it's supposed to reach, and there is communication. The citizens are well communicated about these policies and how it will impact the whole citizen in the future.
Okay, I want us to move the conversation to the trust the Nigerian people have in this government. We have an election coming up in Edo State this month, and the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has announced that they have signed a peace accord, and they've also done a test run of the BVAS technology. Are Nigerians confident that this election will be peaceful, this election will be fair, and it will deliver, and that they can rely on this technology? Or is this all rhetoric by INEC and this government?
Well, I've always said, when it comes to election, it is not just about INEC. Yes, INEC is the electoral umpire. INEC will organize. INEC will announce the winner. But then, we have a lot of other stakeholders when it comes to the political parties. See, the political parties, first of all, need to let themselves know that, okay, this is our state. Whatever rhetoric we send out there will have impact on governance after the election. Also, we have the international communities. The international communities also need to let them understand that, see, if there's election violence, if you're an election rigger, there'll be visa ban. All of these things usually have impact. So we need to also let the candidates and political parties know, they've signed the peace accord. It's not just about signing the peace accord. The way you campaign, what you say, we can trust INEC from now to tomorrow. If political parties, okay, now for example, if political parties brings in TOG and they go and attack a polling unit, or they go and attack the collation center, how does that affect the integrity?
But doesn't that bring in the question of the trust of the Nigerian people in the federal government to ensure that the elections are peaceful, by ensuring that we have enough security on ground so that these things do not happen, these acts of violence are not committed in the first place because there's adequate security and infrastructure on ground? Shouldn't the burden be on the federal government to ensure free and fair elections?
It's a burden on the federal government, and it's a burden on all of us as a citizen. Because sometimes politicians, when we want to seek power, politicians go above and beyond. In fact, to the extent of their utterances, with the way they communicate, with the way they even say some certain things. So now, if the federal government has put up a security architecture, we've seen an election whereby an individual, where police officers, soldiers, the security personnel were killed, they were mauled, even in an election process. So that's what I'm saying. It takes an holistic approach. It takes all stakeholders, both foreign observers, local, the citizen, and different institutions. We need to take ourselves accountable. The moment we begin to shift all our responsibility to government, to federal government, we'll begin to lose the essence of our nationhood. Yes, the fact that the federal government controls the security architecture and the INEC, they have a major role to play. We also are citizens. So those citizens, and I'm talking to you now, and the one coming up in Ondo, you have to talk to yourself. It's about the development of your state. It's not about APC, PDP, Labour Party, ABGA, or whatever party. Don't forget that you are not being nice. It is not just when you want to make your electoral choices. It is not about you liking the face of who is on the ballot paper.
So it's about all the stakeholders.
It's about the prosperity of your nation.
It's about all the stakeholders coming together to work for a free and fair election. I'll move over to Okpeyemi, who is joining us via Zoom to weigh in on the Edo State elections, and that's the governorship elections. How prepared are we as a nation for free and fair elections? And do you agree with Olufemi that it's a burden that should be shared on all of us, shared by all of us, as opposed to being carried by the federal government and INEC when it comes to delivering free and fair elections?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, Isabella.
Hello.
The truth is, it's our collective responsibility to make sure that our electoral processes continue to improve as a country. Yes, the government carries the largest or the most part of the burden, but as citizens, as electorates, as people who are concerned about the development of our states and of our countries, we also have a responsibility, to ensure that our electoral processes continue to improve. However, it continues to break my heart that, year in, year out, we keep discussing the same problem about the Nigerian electoral processes and procedures. It is heartbreaking that we're not improving. It shows how serious a people we are. I'm not just saying that, I'm not putting this on the citizenry, I'm talking about government. We cannot continue to play lip services to organizing free and fair elections, and year in, year out, we are discussing the same concerns, and it is disturbing how Edo State is turning out right now. And if we are, I've seen verbal attacks. It's normal for elections, even outside of Nigeria. However, we should not, in 2024, with everything we went through in 2023, with a government that has the sincerity of purpose to improve systems and strategies, for a freer and fair elections in Nigeria. I think as we look forward to 2023 election, 2024 governorship election in both Edo State and Ogun State, I think our electoral umpire needs to do better. Our political parties need to do better. Our security outfits need to do better. Most importantly, our citizens also needs to also do better in ensuring that they take the development of their state in their hands and not be intimidated by any political party whatsoever. Femi said something earlier that I really agree with. It's not about PDP, APC, or Labour Party. It's about the development of the country. We need to have continued improved process in electoral, processes, and year in, year out, we need to see improvement, and we're not seeing it. It is disturbing that we're discussing the same topic that we discussed in 2023, in 2019, 2015 general elections as it pertains to state elections. I hope
Nigerians want to see
understand
improvement. They want to see improvement in the processes. They want to see transparency, and they don't want to see the same issues coming up over and over again. Olufemi, I'm moving to you, and this time I want us to discuss security, because that's something that affects everybody, and in particular, kidnapping and ransom payments. A report by SBM Intelligence highlighted that Nigerians paid a whopping 1.048 billion in ransom to kidnappers between July 2023 and June 2024, with 7,568 people kidnapped across the country during this period. Now, a lot of times when we talk security, we're looking at maybe banditry, we're looking at the issues in the southeast, Boko Haram in the north, but kidnapping is something that affects everyone across Nigeria. Are you confident in some of the strategies put in place by this government to reduce the incidences of kidnapping, and what should be done to bring these figures down?
Well, I think these conversations has been conversations we've been having over the years. Though, yeah, there are pockets of improvement, but then one thing I want to tell the federal government of Nigeria, most especially the Minister of Communication, Mr. Bosun Tijani, is that we need to stop extending deadline on SIM and NIN linkage. These are some of the loopholes these criminal elements, they take advantage of. So the moment we stop that, the moment we say this is the deadline, and if you are not connected, if you have not linked it, that is the end. So because they use this as a form of communication. So these are the ways they...
The minister needs to stay true to those deadlines and not extend it, because
yes, the minister needs to communicate with NCC and let them know that.
Okay, I'd like to
let them know that this last deadline is final.
This last deadline is final. I'd like Okpeyemi to weigh in on that. What needs to be done to bring these figures down? Is it okay? Does it end with the minister ensuring that these deadlines are adhered to, or there's more to be done?
Thank you, Sabrina. That's an important point Olufemi raised there. I think that tracking kidnapping today, it's not rocket science. We have tech at our disposals, and I think that it still boils down to security architecture as a country and the sincerity of purpose, from our government. So I think number one is that, like Femi said, there has been pockets of improvement, but we can do a lot better. These ransoms are paid into certain accounts, and are we saying that we cannot trace this? Are we saying that in 2024, with all the technological improvement that we have across the world today, and how we are bragging as a country to be improving in terms of digital inclusion and coverage of the internet, are we saying that we cannot trace calls, or we cannot, find out who these, perpetrators of attack on this country is? Because the spate of kidnapping in Nigeria is fast improving. Before it was in the north, now it's spreading across the country. And I think that, there needs to be more collaboration, and we need to actually reactivate our intelligence gathering as a country. Before now, Nigeria used to be one of the best countries on the continent as regards intelligence gathering. But I think that has collapsed right now. Security architecture has collapsed. And I think that, yes, the minister has a role to play. But most importantly, I think, we need to have our banks also have,
so there needs to be a collaboration between the different stakeholders to be able to trace, using technology to trace these kidnappers and to be able to halt them in their steps. Thank you very much, Opeyemi Oke, for your contributions here on Robbing Minds. And thank you, Olufemi Ibitoye, who has joined us from our Abuja studio. Thank you very much. Don't just stand there teasing me. Now it's time to show